Hey, Shaker Road. So we have another read aloud that I'm going to start too called Eye of the Storm by Kate Messner. So Kate Messner came to our school a few years ago, and I'm hoping that she will be returning next school year. So this is a perfect book for us to be listening to because you'll know one of her books before we even start. So this is chapter 1 of Eye of the Storm, and it's a very exciting book. So I hope you like it. Chapter 1, there are no words to describe this sound. In the old days, they said tornadoes sounded like freight trains. I've seen video archives of survivors being interviewed all out of breath. They describe an approaching rumble and then a roar. Wind pouring out of the sky, buildings shaking, and finally the train rumbling off, fading away as the storm lumbers on. But that was then. There are no words for the sound of what is happening now. A thick, dark shadow is snaking down from the cloud that followed us from the airport. It's wider and stronger than anything those people in the video archives had ever seen, bigger than anything they could have imagined. It is headed straight for us. No worries, Jaden, Dad says. But both our data slates are wailing with high-pitched storm alerts. His eyes dart to the rearview mirror as he pulls the HV into a safety lot. I've heard about these huge roadside shelters, but we don't have them at home in Vermont. The one time Mom and I got caught out with a storm coming, we just knocked on somebody's door. It goes without saying in New England, on storm days, you let anybody who needs help into your safe room. But in this part of Oklahoma, there are fewer houses now, hardly any doors to knock on. This huge concrete structure is the first building we've seen for miles. Oh. It's almost full, but Dad maneuvers into one of the last spaces. We'll be fine here. Good timing, I guess. My voice shakes, even though I try to pretend it's no big deal. Mom warned me the storms would be more frequent here, but I never thought I'd see one before we even got to Dad's house. That good timing's no accident. Dad leans back in his seat and picks up his data slate. The glow of the screen lights his face in eerie blue, even as the sky outside grows darker. When StormSafe got the government contract to build these lots, we put one every 15 miles on major roads so you'd never be more than a few minutes from safety. That's how much warning you get when a storm's coming? Give or take. They're like the Revolutionary War era taverns I learned about in my online history course, spaced 15 miles apart because that's how far a traveler could ride in a day. Here we are, 275 years later, driving hydrogen vehicles instead of horses, and we're back to needing shelter every 15 miles. Crazy. Lightning flashes outside. I tug my backpack from the floor into my lap and run the strap between my fingers over and over so I can concentrate on that instead of the pounding in my chest. I can't freak out. Not on my first day with Dad in 4 years. He lives for storms like this. A plastic chair tumbles legs over arms over legs past the entrance we came in. Oh, this is turning into a good one. Dad cranks the volume on his data slate so we can hear the regional news feed over the screaming wind. If they mention the storm, we'll know it's big. Normally, they send out the data slate alerts that replace the old tornado sirens and leave it at that. Mom said when she was growing up, her town got on the national news once when a tornado wiped out half a mobile home park. National news. Now the news feeds only report the biggest of the big, the true monsters. It sounds like this could be one of them. The National Storm Center confirms a tornado warning for all of eastern Logan County, the voice on the data slate says. NSC meteorologists say the system that developed this afternoon has spawned 3 separate tornadoes. The latest, a possible NF6. Residents are advised to get to safe rooms immediately. NF6. I swallow hard. We have our share of storms back home. Who doesn't? But the worst I've seen was the NF4 that ripped the roof off. It ripped the roof off of Mom's environmental science lab at the University of Vermont. Could be. Dad leans to see past me out the shelter door. The tornado doesn't even have its funnel shape anymore. The thick, jerking rope has swelled into a churning blur of brown-black wind. It's rain-wrapped, Dad shouts over the roaring. Tough to see how big it's grown, but at least it's not a niner. That's weather geek slang for an NF9, the second highest rating on the new scale they developed a decade ago, when it became clear the storms had outgrown the old enhanced Fujita scale that went from 1 to 5. When I was a baby, EF5 was the worst a tornado could be. The new Fujita scale goes up to 10, though nobody's ever seen a 10 touchdown. What would they call it, a tenor? The lights flicker and I grip the door handle. Relax, Jaden. Dad punches me lightly on the arm and it sets something off inside me. All the swallowed up storm jitters rise in my throat and I want to scream. Instead, I swallow that too and my eyes fill with tears. I've been on the ground all of 2 hours and I'm not used to it here. None of it feels like home. Not the desolate brown flatness of the land, not the stark concrete gray of the shelters, and not the storms, especially not storms like this. Dad should know that. Maybe he'd understand how I feel. Understand me. If he hadn't spent the last 4 years in Russia doing weather experiments that weren't allowed in the United States, maybe he'd ask how I'm doing now that... Jaden, look! He holds up his data slate and turns the radar screen my way. This hook echo is incredible! He points to the blob on the screen. It's churning, growing, hungry enough to swallow half of Oklahoma. A curled up green extension sticks out one side of the storm like a witch's finger calling us in. I know what he wants me to say. He wants me to ooh and ah and talk about the rotation like we used to when I was little and I'd sit on his lap. And he'd laugh because I knew how to read a satellite map before I was 5. He wants me to be Weather Girl, the nickname he gave me before he left, before he and Mom split up, before the storms got this bad, before everything. He wants me to say how awesome it is, how fantastic and powerful, how amazing. But it's not. It is terrifying and loud, pounding the concrete shelter we're hiding in with uprooted hackberry shrubs and tree trunks and God knows what else. I grab the door and hold on. Relax, Jaden. This is no big deal around here. You're safe. I designed this shelter model myself. Storm Safe tested these things under conditions that were far more... He's trying to comfort me, but he is screaming. Screaming over the storm. He says is no big deal. So I scream back. Dad, stop. I put my head down on the dashboard and press my hands into my eyes, but I still can't escape from the sound. Forget the passing freight train. This is like being inside the engine of the train, inside the throat of some ancient Greek monster that's roared down out of the sky. It's throwing recycling bins and branches, torn up roof tiles so frantic and flapping, they look like huge tortured birds, all flying past the entrance to the lot. I scream again, just stop, stop! And I don't know if I'm screaming at Dad or the storm or both, but neither responds. Finally, I sit up and open my eyes. Dad is ignoring the weather outside, staring at me. He closes the radar image. The storm looks even bigger in the glimpse I catch before it's sucked into a folder on his screen and pulls up his StormSafe corporate login page. He turns the slate away from me as if I'd be able to see or remember his stupid password in the middle of this, and pokes at the on-screen keys. Relax, he says. It's weakening now. I squeeze my eyes closed against the pounding, against the attack from the wind and debris, and I don't answer him. But as if by magic, the roar of that monster from the sky fades back into something more like an old-fashioned freight train, and then dissolves altogether. I don't open my eyes. I sit listening to the train rumble off. I squeeze my eyes shut tighter and think, this was not a storm, it was a monster. This is not home, and this is not the same father I used to have, the one who tucked me into bed singing songs about the wind. That father took me out for ice cream on a summer night 4 years ago. He ordered rainbow sprinkles on his cone right along with me, and he told me why he had to go on another trip, why he wasn't coming home anytime soon, why he needed to open a new storm-safe headquarters in a country that would allow him to do his research. And he left. This father who has come back to me. I open one eye a crack. His fingers fly over the data slate, his eyes focus on the scrolling columns of numbers, laser intense, fierce. He feels like someone I don't even know. That's it for today. See you tomorrow.